Hello and welcome to Naifa Live. I'm your host, Zach Hewells. We're very excited to have you join us for our monthly meeting. We have an all-star panel for you today, followed by some breakout sessions with Q&A with the speakers themselves. But first, to kick it off, as always, our moderator for today, John D. Richardson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, John. And now I'm going to turn things over to our CEO, Kevin Mayu, for some Naifa announcements.
Hello, Naifa Nation. Thank you for joining us today for Naifa Live. We've got a great activity today where you're going to hear from some of our national leaders, members of our board of trustees, who are going to share with you their experience as producers and the role that they play within the larger profession. But before we do that, I just kind of want to bring up a few things to you. One, if you haven't seen it yet, registration is now live for the Naifa Performance Plus Purpose Conference, which is going to be held August 17th through the 19th. This is our signature professional development event each year. And this year, much like last year, it's in an all virtual format. We're going live again in 2022, but this year it's going to be a virtual activity. And we have breakout sessions that are very similar to TED Talks, which have interactive components that allow attendees to exchange ideas with each other, to learn and to grow together. And the sessions that are going to be presented at P+P include some of the very top producers and experts in the industry sharing their insights. We have 4 different tracks. We have sales and prospecting, practice management, technology, and advanced planning. So please register today and join us for Performance Plus Purpose, August 17th through the 19th. Registration is available on the Naifa website. And also, advocacy. Kudos to each of you out there in the Naifa Nation. We're doing a great job, as we always do, advocating on behalf of our members, their clients, and the entire American community through our work. I'm pleased to report that we have surpassed our goal of having 12 states adopt the NAIC new suitability model for annuities. We wanted to have 12 states adopt that standard by the end of June, and we actually had 15 different states adopt that standard by that time. The new model is really important because it dovetails well with the SEC's Regulation BI, and it helps make sure that we have less of a patchwork of standards that are out there from state to state all across this country. We had a big hand in working with the NAIC and developing this new annuity suitability model that, again, looks after the best interests of clients. And I want to thank all of our chapter leaders across the country for the great work that you have done helping 15 different states adopt that new model. See, we get a lot done when we work together, when the national team, our state leaders across this country, and when we partner with companies and the American Council of Life Insurers, we can do great things together. And this is yet another example of the success that we're seeing. It's also important now is the new Department of Labor considers actually resurrecting the fiduciary rule that we were able to get nullified by the courts just a few years ago. We are actively monitoring that situation. And a lot of what we're telling policymakers is give the new model a chance. A lot has changed over the past few years. Give this new model a chance because it can do great things for the industry. It's practical, but most importantly, it does good things for American consumers. So please give, again, the new suitability model and Regulation BI a chance to work. But anyways, let's get back to the program. Today, you're going to hear again from some of our best leaders in Naifa, and they're going to share with you their thoughts and perspectives of being a professional. We've got Tom Michael, who is Naifa's president, Brock Jolly, Naifa's treasurer, Connie Gelliher, a member of the board of trustees, and Evelyn Geller, also a member of the board of trustees, who are going to share their perspectives. And of course, moderating today's panel is our very own John D. Richardson, a tremendous volunteer from the state of Tennessee. So John and members of the board, please take it away. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. And again, welcome everyone to the July edition of Naifa Live. I'm John Richardson. I'll be acting as your host today. And man, I am super pumped to get to hang out with these amazing people. You've probably heard of them. And again, Kevin did a great job of sharing their backgrounds. Today, you're going to get to know, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story behind these folks. And they're serving at the highest level within Naifa, within our organization. And I'm excited to get have this opportunity to share them with you. So again, we've got Tom Michael, we've got Evelyn Geller, we have Connie Gallagher, and the one and only Brock Jolly. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
So we're going to kick things off. I would love to know y'all's Naifa story. So how did you get involved in Naifa? And now that you're serving at the highest level within our association, why do you keep serving? What is it about Naifa that keeps you coming back for more? And we'll start with you, Mr. President. Tom, take it away.
Well, thank you, John, and thanks to everybody for being on here today. As they say, thanks for showing up. And I also want to thank you, John, for doing this, and also to my colleagues, to Brock, to Evelyn, and Connie. Thank you for your service. I just want everyone to know what a great asset they are to our federation and to the industry. With that being said, my Naifa story is probably not very sexy, John. It's I'm from the old school, as they say. When I showed up to sign my agent contract almost 4 decades ago, I signed my agent contract and I signed a application to join NALU at the time, now Naifa. It was just a given that you belong to your association and you gave back. And I'll be frank, I also fall into another common arena, if you will, in that I belonged, but I didn't really participate because no one really asked me to. I'd go to a lunch here or there, but I really didn't do as much as I wish I did at the time. I think my career would have gone along a little faster if I had. But with that being said, I did go to an event about the middle of my second year, near the end of my second year. And as I always say, they were serving that famous rubber chicken with a little cream sauce and some rice on the side that I think everyone's pretty familiar with. But anyways, as my career was going not so well, to be perfectly frank, I learned an idea. I got an idea and I was able to take the idea and then place it to someone that I thought could benefit from it. And it turned out to be my first large sale, all because I went to a Naifa lunch. And so it just shows you the power of networking. It shows you the power of belonging. I mean, there's many things that we do, obviously, on the advocacy side that we're also proud of. But that was an integral part. And I guess the last part of this would be to all those people in attendance today that are new to the business. And it may be a little tough. I would just say this. I did not come running out of the gates like a lot of people are led to believe. Many of us have. I struggled for a couple of years. And it wasn't that I wasn't working hard. I just don't think I was working smart. And I think one of the things I've gotten out of Naifa and from my colleagues is learning to be more efficient, learning how to be smarter, working smarter at least. So with that being said, that sale did get me going. And then the next thing you know, I had another big sale from another idea and my confidence ramped up. And I really have a lot to say thank you to Naifa for doing, because it was that was the turning point.
Oh, that's really good. Working smarter. That's a lesson we can all learn. Evelyn, tell us about yourself. What's your Naifa story? How did you come to join this wonderful Naifa family, and why do you keep coming back for more?
Well, thank you, John, and thank you to everyone who's attending here today, and to my colleagues that is sharing some time and some knowledge. You know, from the bio that was read earlier, I was really introduced into the career by a successful agent who basically guided me through many things throughout my career. And one of the things that he said to me early on was, you need to get involved. You need to know beyond just our local office and just beyond our local company, you really need to know what's happening within the industry. And luckily for me, I was coachable. You know, he suggested that, you know, I attend one of those lunch meetings that Naifa hosted on a local level. And there were a few hundred people that were there. So I was impressed by the fact that this organization was hosting, you know, a lunch and they had some great content, but that we had a very strong local community that I could get entrenched with, start to network, and really, meet people outside of my scope and my area where I was. So the two things that I'm going to say about what NAIFA has done for me and my reason for giving back is this sense of community and individuals that you're surrounded by. And number two is the development as well, because the content was phenomenal. Not only did I get to meet new people, but also get new ideas that could really help me in my practice. So for me, those were the two valuable things that not only did I get from NAIFA, but now I feel as I'm giving back that I'm able to provide as well, as build a community, have those connections, and also, learn as you go.
That's really good. And of course, hopefully today you guys are watching us and joining us live. We'll get a lot out of the value from our content development, as well as the opportunity to make this community just a little bit smaller as you get to know the hearts of these leaders on this call today. Brock, how about you? What's your NAIFA story, and why do you keep coming back for more?
Sure. Thanks, John. So, listening to Evelyn, listening to Tom, I'm a little bit of the combination of both of them. My managing partner, general agent, who I first started with in the business, didn't have me sign a NAIFA contract, but there was a gentleman in that office, a guy by the name of Paul Friedman, who came up to me one day and he said, hey, Brock, what are you doing next Wednesday around noon? And I was a 22-year-old bachelor at the time. He said, there's this free lunch at Congressional Country Club, which is one of the nicer country clubs in the Washington, D.C. area. I said, heck yeah, I'll come out for a rubber chicken with a little rice on the side, maybe even a little vegetables. That sounds delicious to me. And that was sort of it. But like Evelyn said, I got to that meeting and I was impressed by the scale and a little bit the grandeur of it, right? I got there and, the light bulb went off that it's not just me and my little cubicle making 200 cold calls every single day, that this industry is much bigger than that. And I was able to meet people outside of my little cubicle, my little, square of the world, and realize that this business, this industry was much bigger than that. And I think it's already been said, so I won't be too redundant, but, it's the camaraderie, the networking, understanding outside of the 9 dots of your world. What, Tom mentioned some sales ideas that he learned. Evelyn mentioned that, and since she's got it right behind her, she's at New York Life, but you can learn a lot of things outside of the New York Life circle that help you be a better New York Life advisor, right? And probably vice versa. And so those type of things, and just the relationships that have been built, the advocacy that is provided, that is done on behalf of NAIFA members, and the promises that we make to our clients, right? I mean, we've all heard, if you've been around NAIFA for long enough, that NAIFA is sort of like your career insurance. And it's just being able to protect the promises that we make to our clients every single day. And it's just, that's what keeps me coming back. Like Evelyn said, that, at some point you sort of hope that the student becomes the teacher. And so it's why it's important to me. Tom ended his thoughts by saying, hey, if you're new in the business and maybe you're struggling, I didn't jump out of the gates, with Usain Bolt-like speed. I think that you try to just figure out how you can give a leg up to other people as they're getting started, or even as maybe they're hitting some kind of a glass ceiling in this business, right? It's not like all of a sudden it clicks and then, it's just easy, right? We all hit glass ceilings. I mean, I've got a study group of really talented advisors. And just the other day, maybe 10 days ago, one of the guys said, I'm just sort of struggling right now. I'm kind of bored, right? And it was, how do we rejuvenate everybody's career and kind of get you to that next stage, get you through those glass ceilings? So to me, that's what NAIFA continues to be about. And it's sort of like a Swiss Army knife, right? It's like you never know exactly how you're going to use it, but there's so many opportunities and so much flexibility that NAIFA can provide under that big tent that is NAIFA.
Brock, that is so true. And I, by the way, I apologize. I did not include the disclaimer at the beginning of this this July edition of NAIFA Live that yes, many rubber chickens were harmed in the making of various NAIFA memberships. I do not, full disclosure, I do not own any stock in any rubber chicken companies. However, apparently that is a common denominator of all of our successes is the rubber chicken. So Connie, with you, again, what's your NAIFA story and how did you find your way into this NAIFA family and what keeps you coming back for more?
Thank you, John, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. For me, it started as this very odd thing. One of the partners in a firm that I worked with a long time ago, 25 years plus ago, happened to be on the board of Greater Washington, D.C. Association, and he was in charge of membership. And so he came into the office and said, "Can you sign right here?" And I said, "What am I signing?" And he said, "Well, we're trying to get membership numbers up and we're going to include everybody in our office." And so that then led to a few years later, and I started becoming became the editor for our local magazine that we did, a hardcover magazine, which was a lot of fun. But for me, it's always been about protecting our industry. What we do, who we serve is extremely important. Advocacy is extremely important. I think we all, as well as everybody listening, has a story as to why they're in the industry, what keeps them in the industry. But I think that, and Evelyn, I think probably said it the best. I mean, you know, sometimes you're the student and sometimes you grow up and you have to be the leader and you want to bring other people in to an industry that is so amazing and that you have so much control over your own destiny with. So yeah, mine was a slip and fall to be part of a membership push for Greater Washington, D.C., but I've stood with it.
I'm so glad you mentioned, Connie, advocacy, because you're exactly right. There's a lot of folks that keep coming back for more because of advocacy, which is a good transition to my next question, which is, tell me about your business. Obviously, you guys have been in the business quite some time, and I'm sure a large in part to NAIFA's advocacy allows us to stay in business and grow a business. So tell us about your business. What kind of work do you do on a daily routine? And then if you don't mind, throw in something about yourself on a personal note. We'd love to know about your family and what hobbies you have, just to kind of spice things up. So Evelyn, let's start with you.
Okay, so what I want to mention, John, is that I'm not running a practice, but I'm actually leading a team of individuals who are building financial services practice at the New York Life. But you know, when I think back to when I first started my career, and really leveraged the NAIFA. You know, one of the first designations that I got was the LUTCF designation. And that was a great designation for me to get because it gave me the ability not only to get the knowledge, but also to put in that practical application, if you will. In doing that, by the way, I then discovered that, you know, one of the areas that I really wanted to understand and really be able to be a resource for were two major markets. One being working with professional women and understanding their needs. And the second one is really, you know, diversity. My team is very diverse, serving many, many different markets. And I continue to attract more candidates that come from the diverse markets because, you know, we have a message that needs to get out to various communities. And the only way to be able to do that is really to attract more individuals that come from those industries. I really do encourage my team to think about specializing also in the needs of the markets within the markets. So we spend a lot of time talking about, you know, getting various designations. And for me, after the LUTCF that I got through NAIFA, I decided to really pursue some of the designations that were key to the markets that I was serving, whether it was the RICP, the CLTC, and then more recently, I got the CDFA as well.
Oh, it's so good. And Evelyn, I'm glad you mentioned getting more ladies involved in our industry. A mutual friend of a lot of our, Cheryl Hickerson, with her group Females in Finance, is doing just that. And it's really neat to see our association continue to grow as we learn to serve more people in different niches. Tom Michael, tell me more about your business. What's the day in the life of Tom like? And tell us a little about your personal life too, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, day in the life of Tom Michael. That'll put you to sleep. But anyways, I think like a lot of us, my business has evolved. I started off obviously as an individual agent and trying to sell life and disability insurance. And then as I matriculated, if you will, I got into corporate benefits and started to do a lot of non-qualified deferred comp, which was also a feeder to the 401k business and group benefits. But I'd say most of my business right now is in the corporate arena. 401ks and non-qualified. And the beauty of what I've liked doing that over the last 20 to 25 years is that when you have a 401k plan, you have a census, and the census allows you then to you see what people are making, you see how old they are, you're able to make suggestions of whether it's key person insurance, non-qualified plans. You can see if they're not able to put away enough money in a 401k, whatever. As far as our practice, I've been around the lot, if you will. Started off as an agent, then due to pension sales, was asked to become a pension wholesaler. I did that. Then with success in the pension wholesaling arena, I went into agency management, and now I'm in agency management, but also personal production with my wife, Kim. We have a small general agency in West Los Angeles. We have about 15 advisors working for us. We kind of like it that way. We've both run larger shops, and we're at that stage of our career where we're a little more intimate as far as working with our advisors, and so it's and also keeps your overhead down. But with that being said, so that's what we do. Personally, God, I don't know. What you see is what you get. I'm a quote unquote ex jock, like a lot of guys like to say, but I played baseball for a long, long time, and then that evolved into playing golf. So I love my golf, and I'm also a river rat. I have a house up on the Sacramento River, and most importantly, my two boys, TJ and Marcus, they love the river as much as their dad and their mom, and so we like to spend a lot of time up there, just hanging out, wakeboarding, wake surfing. That's replaced water skiing now, and that's actually where I just returned from. So it's a grand place. That's it in a nutshell. And of course, my biggest habit's Naifa.
That's awesome. And Tom, of course, you live and work in the greater Los Angeles, California area, correct?
Correct.
So I've got to know, as a California guy, because there's goodness knows how many professional sports teams in the greater California and in that state. So who do you pull for? What is your team?
I'm the old standby. So the Dodgers moved out here while I was, just being conceived, for lack of a better term. So I'm a lot Dodger fan, Laker fan. But even though I can't skate from me to you, I like following my LA Kings. So
Right.
I go with the old standbys. I can't admit that I follow soccer too much, but I know we have two teams too.
Very cool. Brock, how about you? What's your what's a day in the life of Brock Jolly? What kind of business do you do? And again, on the personal side, tell us about your family.
Sure. Thanks, John. So picture for me 1999. And some of you were well into the business at that time. To paraphrase from Tom Michael, some of you may not have even been conceived at that time, but most people know what was going on in the stock market in 1999. I mean, it was going gangbusters, and I was getting ready to graduate from college. And so, like a lot of you who ended up in this business, I didn't go into college or even come out of college saying, this is what I'm going to do. I kind of fell into it. And I always say I did enough stuff in college that I could get interviews, right? That I was involved and I could put the stuff on the resume. And so people would talk to me. It certainly wasn't just my stellar academic career. But I got interviews, but it really had no idea what I wanted to do. I actually interviewed with one company that I'll allow to remain nameless that told me I was never going to succeed in this business. They've since tried to hire me about 3 times. But I interviewed with this firm up in Bethesda, Maryland. And I remember it like it was yesterday. They said, you need to know 4 things about this business. They said, number 1, you're going to help people tremendously. Number two, you've got lots of flexibility. You can do, sort of like Tom said, you can do insurance, investments, college funding, retirement planning, you name it. Lots of flexibility within these walls. Number 3, you've got no boss. And number 4, you've got unlimited income potential. So I said, all right, that sounds good. I'm in. And I got into this business, and about a month later, the dot-com bubble burst. And I always tell people that it was not entirely my fault. But I started to get a lot of questions from people. I was making 200 cold calls every single day, and I was calling what I'll classify as old people to talk to them about long-term care insurance, because that's like the only thing that anybody was talking about at the time, because nobody wanted to talk about their investments, that's for sure. And, it's like, you can pound your head against the wall enough and, have some modicum of success. I was reasonably successful, but I was driving myself crazy. And I kept hearing these people that I was talking to, and it was mainly, outside of my talking to 70-year-olds about long-term care insurance, I just kept hearing people say, the dot-com bubble burst. How in the world am I going to pay for my kid's college education? And I didn't know the answer. And so I went to other advisors, and I realized most other advisors don't know the answer either. And so I started to research it. Keep in mind, this is before Google. And so researching that subject wasn't real easy either. And I figured out that most advisors don't really know this stuff. And so long story short, in about 2002, I started teaching a class on college funding. Now I say that to a lot of advisors, and a lot of advisors think, well, that's like 529s, right? Well, today maybe it is, but I would tell you too, here's the deal. What I've discovered and what I've become really passionate about is college funding is the #1 financial fear of most American families. Nobody's talking about it. So there's a great book out there called Blue Ocean Strategy, right? How do you create that blue ocean where people will basically pound a path to your door, beat a path to your door? And I wanted that blue ocean strategy. I was tired of making my 200 cold calls every single day. I said, how does that phone start ringing the other direction? And so long story short, I sort of fell into, because it certainly wasn't by design, it was more by default. But I created this organization called the College Funding Coach. And we've got advisors now all over the country who use college funding as the door opener to be able to do comprehensive financial planning. So the idea is, when advisors come to me and say, yeah, it's about college, about 529 plans, right? Well, yeah, maybe, but I always say it's about strategy, not about product. And I'll tell you, I run a fairly successful financial planning practice. The college funding, again, is sort of the door opener to be able to do that comprehensive planning. And so, those are sort of my two babies, right? Running the financial planning firm that has evolved into a comprehensive planning firm. And, we do all the stuff that everybody else on this call probably does. Leading with financial planning, obviously doing investments, doing insurance. And then I've kind of got the College Funding Coach, which is a little bit more entrepreneurial. It's tied at the hip to my planning business. In terms of my family, I'm married. I've got 2 kids. I've got Bryson, who's 7, and Olivia, who just turned 1. So got my hands full. But it's awesome, and having a lot of fun doing it.
And Brock, you're in the DC area, so I got to know it. And Evelyn, I apologize. I'll get back to you on your question as far as your team. But Brock, who's your team? Got to know.
All right, so I'm gonna go the path not taken. I'm gonna go the other way than Tom. I'm not a DC guy, so my father. This is a long story. I'll try to shorten this. My father, who's from West Virginia, was a lifelong New York Yankees fan. So when I was born, I had to be a Yankees fan. So I've been a Yankees fan. Was a Yankees season ticket holder for 3 years. And been a Yankees fan all my life. I'm more of a college football guy and college basketball than pro. So I'm a University of Virginia grad, so I follow them. I guess but I grew up in Indiana. So my teams on the pro side are the Colts and the Pacers, which, is not too popular outside of the state of Indiana, I suppose. But that's sort of the deal.
So now that Brock has made friends with everybody outside of the greater DC area, all the neighboring, I guess in the East Coast, that's good. Evelyn, how about you?
Well, and if I can just finish on that, since
Sure.
Tom ended with hockey, and I grew up a hockey player. I've been a Washington Capitals season ticket holder for about a decade. So That's sort of my go-to these days as well. So go Caps. So to Evelyn.
Evelyn, how about you? Who do you root for?
So I've been a baseball fan my entire life, by the way. And it was interesting because just a couple of weeks ago, we decided to go to a Yankees versus Mets game. And my husband has done a really great job of recruiting my two kids, by the way. They're grown, they're 21 and 22. I've got one in law school and I've got another one who's focused on aerospace engineering as a profession. So I'm an empty nester. But it was good because my daughter came home, we decided to go to a game. And there we were, Yankees versus the Mets. Now, we've been having this tradition for years and years and years. And I always leave unhappy because the Yankees win. Well, a couple of weeks ago when we went to this game, the New York Mets really beat the Yankees. So I had a great time at it. Big Met fan since a little girl, follow baseball, just absolutely love the game.
Oh yeah, I remember the good old days of Darryl Strawberry, if y'all remember back in the day. Connie, how about you? What's your story again? What kind of work do you do? Tell us about your personal life.
Sure.
And then the baseball question looks like it's, or your sports team of choice, if you don't mind.
Boston Red Sox. I'm just going to put that out there. We'll start with Boston Red Sox. People always ask me when I fly, they're like, you have Red Sox on. You must be a Red Sox fan. I'm like, exactly. You're smart. Do you have insurance? If not, I'll help you buy some. But my practice is a small practice. I'm part of a company called M Financial. And my focus, although I do a lot of life insurance, my primary focus has always been disability insurance, individual disability insurance, and long-term care insurance, not dissimilar to what Evelyn was saying about long-term care and having that CLTC designation through Naifa, which is very important. But, I focus on clientele. I want to help them protect their income while they're working, right? Your biggest asset during your working years is your ability to earn an income. So we want to help protect that income. And then we want to help people. I want to help people when they retire, know that they have at least some amount of money carved out specifically for long-term care. A lot of people say, oh, I'm worth X amount of millions. And I always say, well, how liquid is that, right? Do you have to sell the beach house? Are you going to get rid of the boat? What assets are you going to actually have to sell to get cash? Because the only thing that pays for long-term care insurance is cash. So to have a pool of money set aside for an insurance company is always very helpful. I live outside of Washington, D.C. I don't claim, like Brock, to be a D.C. person. I didn't grow up in the United States. I grew up in Europe. But I live on a beautiful farm outside of D.C. in Maryland. I have been with the same lovely woman for 25, in a couple of weeks, going to be 26 years. We're big horse people and we're big dog people. So the kids are standard poodles and big horses. And we love it out here. We sit on the front porch and we're watching the corn grow up. It's not a bad life.
Oh, that's great. And by the way, Brock, I apologize. I know you're a big DC fan. I didn't mean to stir the pot there and get Connie going too. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you shared that. So let's do this. We're right in the middle of our Naifa Live presentation. So let's add a little intermission for fun. Let's go to books. So leaders are readers, and I'm sure you guys read books or get some kind of knowledge, whether it's through the written word or through audiobooks or wherever. But I'd love to do a lightning round again, like top 2, 3, 4, 5 books that you have read that you were like, and everybody who's watching, get out your pen and paper handy. You want to jot these down. I know I am. So again, we'll start with you, Tom. Let's go lightning round. Top 5 must-read books, and go.
Okay, book I'm currently reading is a Atomic Brain, Atomic Habits, excuse me, but it affects your brain. It's how to build good habits and get rid of old. I think it's Jim Clear who wrote it. And ironically, I was looking at the Wall Street yesterday, and it's #1. And I've had the book for a couple months now, and just been reading it for. It's just a great book. Some of my old favorites: The Best of Charlie Zimmerman was the old CEO of the old Connecticut Mutual, former Jack Newton Russell Award winner, very active in Naifa. Many of you may not have heard of Norm Levine. Norm Levine is an industry icon. He's got a handful of great books. He was a great friend of mine. How to Build a $1 Million Agency. Outside the industry, Jack Welch, Winning, I love. Row the Boat. by John Gordon and PJ Fleck. PJ Fleck's the football coach at University of Minnesota. And of course, if you haven't heard of Tom Hegna, you better get on the bandwagon. I use his books consistently right now. They're great for clients to get them to think outside the box. I'll stop there.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, if you haven't read Paychecks and Playchecks, you're overdue. That's a good one. All right, how about you, Connie? Lay it on us. What are your top 5 must reads for everybody who's watching today? Go ahead.
So I prefer magazines and newspapers. So I'm a big Washington Post and New York Times reader. I love The Energy Bus. I think that anybody who has not read The Energy Bus should read it. And if you've read it, you should probably read it again. I think Brock and I have talked about this before. Good to Great is another good one. I like more magazines, as I mentioned, and newspapers, but magazines, I'm always on Money Magazine, Kiplinger's Magazine. I feel that is current and has maybe a little bit more to do with the business aspect of it. When I'm not focused on business and what's going on in the world, I'm an autobiography and a biography lover. You pick anybody. They could be 1,000,000 years old and they could be 1 day old. If they've got a book about themselves that they've written or somebody else has written, then I'm all about that. I think that I've learned a lot from people based on what they've done and how they've succeeded or how they haven't succeeded and what their obstacles have been. And for me, that's more of a life learning lesson than just me focusing on my business and reading a bunch of business books. Who Moved My Cheese is another great one. I just found that one the other day. I was moving stuff around. I'm like, who moved my cheese? So that's obviously like a quick minute read, but it's interesting. And I think during COVID, we've all had to retool how we do our businesses. So Who Moved My Cheese actually may be more current and more relevant now than maybe we thought it would have been.
Oh, it's good. Okay, Brock, how about you? What are your top 5 must reads?
Well, I'll try to not repeat because some of what Connie and Tom have said, I would totally concur with. Book I recently read is this book called Traction by Gino Wickman. Excellent stuff. There's a few spin-off books that have come out of that as well. But, I think a lot of us are guilty of, we get lots of great ideas, but then the implementation is tough. That's a great one. Another one's called The Power of Moments. This is by the guy's brothers who wrote Decisive, couple of them. Anyway, Chip and Dan Heath wrote that. Other ones I'd had to write my notes down here. Scaling Up by Vern Harnish is a great one. 4-Hour Work Week and The Pumpkin Plan. How do you, Pumpkin Plan is sort of, I'll give you the story. It's how do you grow the world's largest pumpkin? Well, sometimes you got to cut off the small pumpkins in order to get the nutrients to the big pumpkin. Think about how that applies to your business. Right? What are the shiny objects that you're focusing on that might cause you to not be able to grow the world's largest pumpkin? So interesting, quick read. And then the one that I have just recently read is Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. Great and quick read, founder of Strategic Coach. The thing I'll say too, just real quickly, a thought is this. During COVID, a lot of people have said to me, I gained 30 pounds during COVID. Well, I actually did the exact opposite. I lost 30 pounds during COVID, not because I didn't eat, but because I got really focused on 2 things. I got focused on riding the Peloton, right? So I was riding the Peloton every single day. And then what I did is I found that it's an easy way to read books while you're riding the Peloton. Now, I'm not sitting there with the book in front of me. I'm using Audible. Right? And so I would just tell you, spend $15 a month. You can blow through, some of them are free. So you can blow through 2, 3, 4 books in a month on Audible. And then look, if you really like the book and you like what you're hearing, go get the real one and read it. But I can do an hour on the Peloton, get healthy. I don't need to listen to the instructor. I've never been very good at listening to instructors anyway, but I can listen to an Audible book and, kind of get the old 2 birds with 1 stone. So just food for thought.
So I am not a Peloton rider, but for those who are watching today who are Peloton riders, Brock, what's your Peloton handle? What's your name so we can ride alongside you?
Yeah, so I'm it's very creative, Brock T, as in Thomas, Jolly, at Brock T Jolly. Come ride with me. Love it.
Very cool. And last but not least, again, Evelyn, what are your top 5 must-read books?
So I was a little concerned here that there might be some overlap, but luckily my list is a little bit different than most here. And I agree with you. Personal growth is something that you have to be intentional about, right? And you have to own it as well. I think that for the last few years, when I spent a lot of time on the road, Audible was my way of listening to many, many books. But I think that through COVID, I decided I was going to flip over to hard copy, right? So it's interesting. But I took a little different strategy, by the way. There are a number of books that I've read over the last few years that I took a moment to say, let me go back to those books because they were good books with good content, and perhaps I didn't execute as well as I should have. So on the top of my list here that I reread were 4 Disciplines of Execution by Sean Covey. A lot of books that I read are not only for my own personal development, but also for the development of my team to be able to help them to be better as well. So 2 great books about the power of questions, by the way. I'm always talking to my team about, your results are directly correlated to the quality of the questions that you're asking. So 2 books that we've read as a team is The Prosperous Coach by Steve Chandler and The Question Behind the Question by John Miller are 2 top books. And then the last book I want to mention here is when COVID struck, we all had to reinvent ourselves and the way that we conducted business, right? And Zoom and virtual selling was something that was brand new to everyone. Even if you were accustomed to doing Zoom, now you're going to be doing it full time. So I picked up a great book by Jeb Blount called Virtual Selling. And it's just about the nuances, not only about, how to set up your Zoom camera and virtual backgrounds, but it was about really how you connect with people now virtually. This is a people to people business, and now we were asked to be able to do that virtually. So that's a great read as well, Virtual Selling by Jeb Blount.
So good. So real quickly, we're going to, 2 of you guys, Connie and Brock, you both mentioned lessons learned, and as far as limiting the shiny objects and cutting them out, and of course, biographies teach us from the lessons of others what we could do differently. So if you guys could go back, and this is just a 100 words or less, one lesson you've learned in your history of being in business, and if you could do it all over again, what advice would you give yourself if you could start over again? Tom, start with you.
Okay, well, Johnny, obviously they didn't tell you I've never done anything 100 words or less in my life, but I'll try. Anyways, I would say, first of all, if I was to go back to, I mentioned earlier when I signed up with Naifa, and I know this is going to sound like a Naifa advertisement, but it really isn't. It's from the heart. If they had told me that when I was signing that contract to belong to an association, that this would be the most powerful tool to help me grow professionally, to help me grow as an individual, and all that while making 200 to 300 of your best friends, I think most of us would probably sign up on the dotted line. But that's just the honest to God truth, whether it's people I currently serve with or served with or have gotten to know. Christmas cards and holiday cards and births and weddings, and it's just become an integral, fabulous part of my life. And so I think that's the one thing I would like to say as far as what happened. One thing I wish I knew then, it's kind of come up. Brock's mentioned it, and Connie and Evelyn have also mentioned it. I tried to do too many things. I tried to be everything to everybody, medical and this and that. And I think you can spread yourself too thin. Find out what you really enjoy, find out what you're really good at, and then, as they say, dive deep on that. And I think you'll have far better success.
That's really good. That's really good advice. Connie, how about you? If you could do it all, what would you do differently, and what advice would you give yourself?
I don't think I would really do anything differently. I mean, I've listened to people when they gave me good advice. I listened to their coaching. For me, the biggest takeaway is finding out what you're passionate about. When I walk into a client's office and I start talking about disability insurance or long-term care, they say, wow, you're so passionate about it. And that's true. So I would always say to anybody who's entering the industry to find out what you're really passionate about. I mean, I thought it would be life insurance based on a personal experience, but it ended up I was more interested in watching other people who had a loss of income and didn't have any insurance to protect it, or somebody who was having like an Alzheimer's issue with a parent and they didn't have the resources. And so for me, find something that you're passionate about and get really good at it and be known in the industry, right? I mean, I've been published in Money Magazine. There are a lot of things that you can do to become known as an expert in what you're really good at. And so I think that if you're passionate about it, I think you'll be successful with it.
That's good advice. Brock, how about you?
I was thinking as Connie said that, my mom used to have a sign that hung above her desk that said, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I often take that and I say, look, I work pretty hard, let's be honest, right? But I love what I do and I'm passionate about it. I think to answer the question on what would you do differently, I think I've done it, right? Like Connie said, I'm a little stubborn. I'm a little untrainable, but eventually I figure it out. I just wish I had figured it out sooner. And just a couple of very quick stories. You know, there's a guy by the name of Bill Bishop who has written a number of books, and he's sort of a packaging expert. So how do you package it and how do you position things for sale and that kind of thing? And he says, don't just be a little bit different, be a lot different. Right? He wrote a book called The Problem with Penguins. And he says, look, financial advisors, y'all kind of look the same, sound the same, use the same lingo, right? And I think, look at the four of us, right? We're different walks of life, different parts of the country. I guess Connie and I are right here in DC, but we're very different people. But when we talk to people, we probably kind of say the same stuff. And so how do you differentiate yourself? For me, that has become college funding. Right? It's a great door opener for us because the reality is the person at New York Life or Mass Mutual or Merrill Lynch or LPL, consumers all kind of think of them the same. So Bill Bishop, don't just be different, be a lot different. And then Tom Hegna, previously mentioned, spoke at a Naifa P+P conference. It wasn't called P+P then, but way back in 2010 or 2011 in Seattle. And I heard him say, there's riches in niches. And I just followed that, right? It's like, follow the niche. And then the last thing I would say, do joint work. Do more joint work, whether you're the expert or you're the novice. Joint work is better for clients. It's better for you. You don't let things slip through the cracks. Everyone raises the bar when we do joint work in this industry. And I wish I did more of it early on. I was too stubborn. And so I said, well, 100% is better than 50%. What I didn't realize is I lost an awful lot of sales with that mindset. And even now, I'm willing to give up, 40, 50, 60% of some cases to have somebody else come in and do it. And I think we're all better as a result of that. Right? So those are just a few nuggets I would try to pass on.
That's really good. Evelyn, how about you?
So when I first looked at this question, John, I said, I never lived my life with regret and saying would have, should have, could have, right? Because I had a coach once who said to me, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, right? But as I examine this question a little bit more, my advice perhaps is to some people that are here on the line who are just getting started in their career, and I think it's been brought up a couple of times, is that you start out as a general practitioner, but then think about where you want to specialize, because specialists do excel in this business. The second piece of advice that I would say is seek out study groups, whether it's internal within your organization or outside. Look for those resources that can help you become better, bigger, better, and faster in this industry. There are a lot of resources that are out there. You might even think about mastermind groups also, where you're just sharing ideas. Mentorship has always been a big piece of, not only what I do in mentoring others, but also being mentored as well. And then the final piece is find a sponsor, find someone who can help you with your career, whatever that trajectory might be as well. So those are couple of pieces of nuggets that I wanted to add to this conversation.
Oh, this is so good. Hopefully you guys have been jotting these down. I know I've literally have a page load of notes. This has been so good. We're coming up on our very final last question, and we're going to land the plane and let you guys get back to our well, actually, we're going to have a conversation with these amazing presenters in a minute. So our final question is, again, we're in the business of serving our clients and helping them. And they say that you're not in the business until this business gets into you. And that happens at the time when you have to deliver a death claim. A person purchased life insurance through you, and someone they loved close to them passed, and you were that person delivering that check, and it leaves a mark. I know we've all had those stories. I'd just love just to real quickly, with the few minutes that we have left, go around and just love to hear your stories. Again, Tom, starting with you.
Wow. Well, again, once experience is a wonderful wonderful attribute, but it also in this business has given me some rough ones. I'll try to just give you one good, one bad, if you will. As I mentioned earlier, I've worked in the 401k business for quite some time now, and I had a meat packing company, mostly blue collar, that was a client. And doing an annual review, I mentioned that they should think about possibly buying a group life insurance for their employees, because most of them probably didn't have it. He asked how much it cost, and the cost was minimal, as most of you know, a $50,000 blanket group term. And I think I joke about it, but I shouldn't joke about it. But I think the commission was all of about $6 or $7 a month. So, doesn't pay for much. It wasn't about the commission. It was about doing what we do, and that's looking for our clients. Anyways, a group life policy, we've probably done, a lot of people on this call have probably done a lot of them over the years, and a couple of years went by and didn't think anything of it. But then I got to my office one Monday morning, and I got in early on Monday. I'm a pretty early riser, and the light was already on. I'm going, God, that's not usual. Anyways, the client had called me on Sunday. They did not have my, I don't even know, this might have been pre-cell phone, to be honest with you. And they had told me that there'd been an accident with two of their employees. They had gone to Vegas for the weekend, and on the way back, two brothers together, truck went over the side, and they both perished. I remember them signing the little card. They both didn't speak very good English. That has nothing to do with the story, but they were more interested in getting money. They wanted to know how much it costs. They really weren't interested in the insurance. And I told them it was a good idea. They finally said, okay. I still get a little shooken on this, because I do remember getting that check. And the owner of the company told me about the funerals, which I went to. And then I went to the celebration afterwards, and I brought those two $50,000 checks that these families did not know were coming. And I don't know how you would put it. I could have run for king. They were overwhelmed, and $50,000 to these people. It's just one of those days you just never forget. And it did frame a lot of my approach on everything, but it was something else. And so, the lesson obviously there is, don't worry about the commission, worry about the need. The second one is, I still kick myself. It was a photographer couple. They were brilliant. They did our wedding. And she was the beautiful blonde who always told you to do this and smile and lean to your left and get your hair out of your face and all that. And she made you chuckle, and he did the great pictures. And I tried to get them to buy insurance, and he wouldn't budge. He didn't think it was necessary. He said, we're perfect health. We surf 3 times a week. We exercise. Nothing could happen to us. And it almost got uncomfortable, because I kept saying, John, you just can't be so short-sighted. Long story short, on the 4th of July, standing by a pool, at the age of 44, she collapsed. She had a hole in her heart. She was on life support for about 10 days and she passed. And there was no insurance, 3 young kids. And I still kick myself on what I could have done differently. Now, the good news is the kids have survived, but they went through years of turmoil, for lack of a better term. And so I got, that one still sticks with me too. We're in a powerful business, as you all know. I think it's one of the most noble professions there is. And those 2 stories, along with a few others, have had a real imprint on my life and how I approach my clients.
Thanks for sharing, Tom. Evelyn, how about you?
So early on in my career, one of the things that that was emphasized in me learning is always asking for referrals, right? Getting really close to the family. So I got this referral to a young family. There were 2 kids. I think she was the oldest. She was about 12 and the son was about 10. I was able to make the appointment without a hitch. But when I took a look at the address, I said to myself, not sure if I want to go to this particular area to see this couple. But I made the appointment during the day. And, back then I was fearless. It didn't really matter. I'd go anywhere. They lived on the 14th floor of, not such good area in a building. But you know what? I was like, this is a referral. They seem nice. Let me go sit with this family. Young kids, like I mentioned before. She was a non-working mom. He drove tractor trailers, by the way, across the country, delivering product and all of that. We had a great conversation. It's just one of those couples where, they absolutely adore each other. There's a lot of love in that family. Making the presentation on the importance of the insurance was not a hardship. It was really easy to be able to really secure the life insurance. We took the application. It was underwritten. It took a little while because he's on the road most of the time, but we finally got an issue and I delivered the policy. I'd say about 2 years later, it's right over that 2-year contestability period. I got a phone call from her saying she was absolutely hysterical that Mr. Alvarez had passed away. And I said to her, I will be there tomorrow. And it wasn't just about delivering a death claim, by the way, but it was more about, having the conversation about what a great man he was, what a great father he was, how much the children absolutely adored him. And it was an aha moment for me, where I'm sitting there and we're having a conversation about him. And this is someone that I met and saw and had a great conversation with. And here I was with the family, delivering a death claim check and talking about how things were going to be okay. And I think that's really when I had that moment of the work that I do and the impact that I have on people's lives. It's just not about the piece of paper that's signed or the policy that's delivered. It's really about the work that we do and how we impact individuals. And I think that was a turning point for me in my career as well.
That's good. Evelyn, thanks for sharing. Connie, how about you?
I'll try and thank you, John. I'll try and make this a little bit short in that I represent university hospitals. So each year there's an enrollment period. I travel from hospital to hospital, signing up new residents for the individual disability policies that their university has provided them as part of their contract. And there was one doctor in particular in Texas who worked in the emergency room. He was hard to get. I had all their pager numbers, and he'd be like, yeah, I'll come see you, but he never showed up. I was due to leave one morning. So the night before, I'm like, he's the only one who hasn't signed his documents. So I felt like I wasn't going to get my job done. I don't like the emergency room, just to go on record, at all, and have white coat syndrome, which why you represent a lot of university hospitals is sort of shocking. So I finally went down to the emergency room and I stood there and I waited and I waited and I waited. And finally he's like, I'm sorry. He signed the form. I'm like, good, I'm out. So I go the next morning to say goodbye to the people in the office, and everybody's like crying. I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? I know I'm leaving. I know you're crying. I'll see you next year. And they said, no, they said that Dr. Brad, who was the emergency room physician on his way home after the midnight shift, had run into a steer, and it rolled up onto the windshield of the car and it paralyzed him from the neck down. And that was devastating news. His wife was also a physician resident at the hospital, and she came in and saw me later that day. I changed my flight, and she said, did he sign the form? And I said, yes. So he signed his form, which meant he showed intent, even though the hospital had not paid his premiums. So he now has $10,000 a month of disability insurance from that policy. So she was thankful. They had just purchased a home. And so fast forward a year later, I go back and I'm starting the same process of meeting with the new residents and talking to the ones that are graduating. And they're like, oh gosh, come on, let's walk down the hall. And I walk down the hall and there's Dr. Brad in a wheelchair. He had mobility finally in his hands. He was driving his own wheelchair around. His speech was great. And he changed from being an emergency room physician to being a psychologist. So not only did he get the $10,000 a month from the disability policy that he was provided, but he also now had income as a physician, just a different type of physician than what he anticipated. So it's those reasons that it makes me so passionate about what we do. We do make a difference in people's lives.
That's a great story. All right, last but not least, Brock, help us land the plane. Tell us your story.
Sure. So, mine's a little different, but I'll give the background of it. So, I started this business in 2000. In 2004, I sold, similar to Tom, what was, probably one of the smaller policies that I had ever written. It was a $50,000 universal life insurance policy on a husband and wife. And, it was more, okay, I think it was sort of a favor to me, quite frankly. But it was a little bit of, let's make sure we can cover burial expenses and these type of things and, just cover whatever those expenses may be. Well, in August of 2009, I received a call. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting with my assistant at the time. We were going to lunch at the Olive Garden, and we were in the parking lot getting ready. I had this call that came in, and so we sat there as I took this phone call that this client had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Okay, I'm 31 years old, right? What do you do? And I didn't really have an answer for that. And, I was there and tried to say, hey, here's what's going to happen and here's how this works. Well, long story short, on July 9th of 2011, that client died, and she was 66 years old. And it was the first death claim that I had ever paid in my life. And why it really hit home for me is that client was my mother. And so to have the experience of a child, but also of an advisor, and see the critically important work that our industry does, and the value, just like Evelyn and Tom and Connie all told as they told their story, the impact that we can have on these families. And isn't it amazing how on the front end, everybody it's like, what was the doctor's name, Connie? Bob?
Dr. Brad.
Brad, sorry. And it was a B name, sorry. Dr. Brad, right? Like, he didn't want to see Connie. But you got to be persistent. You got to keep seeing people. And I don't think I was that persistent with my mom. That's not the message. The message is understand the impact and the difference that we make in people's lives. And we were sort of rehearsing for this call, and I told that story. And I think, Connie, who I've, known pretty well for over a decade, had never heard that story. And I'll add to that story because I'll tell you, this past weekend, you might have noticed the date there, July 9th of 2011. This past weekend on July 10th of 2021, my stepmother passed away totally unexpectedly. She was in great health, and we think she had a heart attack. And I won't get into the details right now, but I'll tell you, it's not only dealing with her death, but now also the ripple effects of how do we now take care of Dad, because she was the primary caregiver. And what are we going to do? Is he going to go to a facility? Is he going to have somebody come in and, provide 24/7 care? But my point is this. John said it before we dove into this question. All of us got into this business, but eventually this business has to get into you, right? It's a calling, right? And it's different than any other business. And I think the power of Naifa is about having a network of advisors who you can share these kind of stories with, who you can, have a big heart for the value that we provide for people and the impact that we can have, because we really, really do change people's lives. So I'll close it at that before, I get all waterworks. But John, appreciate all you've done. Tom, Evelyn, Connie, awesome sharing the stage with you today. I'll turn it back to you, John. Thank you.
Wow. Well, Brock, thank you for sharing. That was, that's something. Wow. Guys, again, I appreciate y'all, and hopefully those folks at home, you've taken some good notes and taken a lot away from today's Naifa Live event. And with that, I will wrap things up. Again, Connie, Tom, Evelyn, and Brock, I appreciate you guys as extension of my Naifa family. And for those folks who are watching at home, again, you're part of the Naifa family too, and look forward to continuing this conversation as we break into small groups now, so we get to know you guys on a personal level. With that, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
John.